Azure. So there's lots of ways to get and use in Azure, but understand my subscription is all by itself. It cannot be combined with other subscriptions designed specifically for dev and test purposes. In my case, I happen to use it to teach. So what I want to do is I want to hop in the portal and show you where the free services are. So let me go ahead and switch into the portal. And in my portal, I'm just going to do a quick search for free services. And I type in free and just go ahead and open it up. And it tells me how to get the 12-month with free Azure account. It tells me what I get for 12 months for free. But as I scroll down, I want to point out something here that's really nice. Always free services. Folks, now I tell you that most of your businesses you're not going to run in the always free services category, but I like to show this because you might work for nonprofits or small community environments where they need just a little bit of computing power or a little bit of horsepower. You might be able to do that for free inside of Azure. So research these, especially if you're involved in some of those committees outside of work. I'm telling you what, folks, it's a really good way to work in Azure. And if you don't, guess what? This is a good way to kind of kick the tires. See what's there. You have all kinds of technology you can kind of explore and research and leverage inside of Azure. So you definitely want to take a look at those free services. Not a lot of folks know that they're there, but they've always been there. They've always been there for us to use and leverage. We have our free services. So let's go ahead and switch back. Just wanted to show that to you real quick. And inside of Azure, we took a look at our free services, but now let's talk about how to plan and manage costs. And I know I hear the yawns, but folks, you have to understand how you're billed. And first off, how is pricing and purchasing determined? Well, under the covers, we have this little concept called a usage meter. Now, if you're thinking like, hey, is that like my meter, my electric meter, or my water meter? Yeah, exactly it is. Whenever you start to work with Azure resources, the meter starts to spin. Well, how fast does it spin? What's my price? Well, it depends. It depends on what type of customer are you. Are you an enterprise customer and have an EA with the discounted rate, which means it changes how that usage meter spins? Or are you a cloud solution provider, a CSP? This is generally for our mid-sized to smaller organizations where they hire a partner come in to build those solutions in Azure on their behalf, and sometimes those partners will have discounts, so that can control the price. Then we also have the web direct or the pay-as-you-go. That's basically the full retail price of Azure. So it depends on how you acquire your subscription is going to control your price. But we also have other factors that come into play. What type of resource? Every resource inside of Azure has different price points. And also we have different types of services that are basic services, that are premium services, that are standard service. Those all dictate that. And then we also have the ever popular location, location, location. What region you put that stuff in matters as well. There's lots of factors that come into that pricing and purchasing. And when we look at Azure, you have to understand this. When you start sending resources up, how do we calculate that? So knowing where your stuff is, knowing how you acquired that is going to determine what your bill is going to be. Now, we also have charges for zones, and we have different billing zones. Now, really, the main reason we have these zones are for bandwidth purposes. We've talked about in some of the modules, modules 2 specifically, we talked about egress traffic charges. When we have charges that go outside, when we have outbound data transfer, it's all dictated by the different zones that we have. And these billing zones control that environment based on that pricing for outbound data transfers. And really, you'll see this in the calculator when you're working with these. And generally speaking, the zones are kind of a higher level abstract for billing, higher than the geographies that we have inside of Azure. How do you estimate costs? Remember, we talked one of the benefits of cloud and one of the terms we did in Module 1, predictive cost. Well, how do I predict my cost? We actually have a pricing calculator that will allow you to come in and see what those price resources. I'm going to show this to you in just a moment so I can show you how it works and how the different pivots and switches and how we can control costs and see what's there. And I'm going to show you how to save a lot of money on a virtual machine without having to change what you actually get. So let's take a look at that calculator right now. So let me switch into the calculator. And in my pricing calculator, and let me clear out my calculator because I've done this a few times. We have the ability to come in here and do any of the services that we want. We have compute, we can look at networking, we can look at storage. Pretty much every service inside of Azure has the ability to have a calculator for it. So I'm just going to go up to the feature because I want to use virtual machines because they do such a good example what's here. Now folks, if you're going to build something in Azure, I'm willing to bet somebody's going to ask you, how much is this going to cost me? Well, you're going to have to know how to use the calculator. So here I am in the calculator. I'm just going to go into virtual machines. And it's going to add it to my calculator here. And notice that, and I'm going to kind of keep this, pay attention to this little number. Right now we're at $152.62 a month for this virtual machine, which is a D2 V3 virtual machine. It's currently running Windows. Now, bear in mind, the cost of this virtual machine has not only what operating system you have, but also what type of virtual machine we have. So this is Windows. What if I want to run Linux, which doesn't have a licensing cost? Notice what happens to the price. Now it's down to $85. Same virtual machine, but now we don't have to pay that licensing. So when you work with these environments, when you have this, you're buying the license for that. Linux and Ubuntu and CentOS, they don't have licenses, but we have the ability to work with that. But also location matters. Notice I'm in West US. Well, let's go to the newer version of West. Let's go to West 2. And notice what happens. That price goes down to $137. Why? West 2 is a newer data center. It's more efficient. Remember, economies of scale, we pass those savings on to you as our customers, so even in the US. I don't know. Garrett, pick a region for me.
Let's go East US.
East US. East US is 137. East 2, also 137. Let's go Japanese. Let's go to the Far East. 161 for that same VM. Let's go to India, 173. So different locations in different regions. So folks, as you're moving this environment around, understand that the location matters, the location of where we put the resources. And why might you choose one region or another? Well, global reach and latency are going to factor in. Put your regions close to the resources you're going to consume. But if you really don't care, pick the one that's going to save you some money inside of it. So I'll go back to West. So we're back to our 152. Now, remember, this is for the Windows system. What if I want to have some SQL with it? Now, understand what I'm getting ready to do, because you're going to see the number jump quite significantly, because we think you want to buy SQL Enterprise. When I choose SQL here, it's not that I'm going to run SQL on top of this. This means I'm buying a Windows server with a brand new Windows license and a brand new SQL license that I have. And this means I'm going to pay for not only the virtual machine, but also the SQL license. And in this case, it defaults to Enterprise. So I went from $152 to $1,200, a little over $1,200.
That's a pretty significant jump.
Well, I don't want to use Enterprise. Maybe I go down to Web, and that price goes into it. What are you buying a brand new license? Now, folks, a lot of your organizations have bought SQL under what is called software assurance, or SA. If you've bought SQL for your organization with SA, you have what is called license mobility. What does that mean? You can bring that license with you inside of Azure. Now, you can't build it by adding SQL, putting SQL in the image that you pull from the marketplace. You'll build a Windows server, install SQL separately, and apply your license to that. And you won't have to pay that cost inside of here. So I'm going to turn off SQL here. We have the different type of tier. I have standard, and I have one called low priority. And low priority machines are basically our way of saying, okay, you know what, I'd like to have 5 servers always, but I'd like to have 10 just to have. Well, you can buy 5 additional low priority servers, but if Azure needs that capacity for whatever reason, we're going to take those servers away from you. But to do that, we give you a price discount on those machines. So normally what we'll see is we'll see 5 folks, hey, I have 5 servers running the full price, don't ever touch them, and then I have 5 running low priority, which are called spot instances that Azure can take back if it needs capacity. And because you do that, you get a discounted rate. And choose standard. By the way, basic here are the real minimal servers. There are A-level servers, and we're talking like, a quarter of a gig of RAM, real small single-purpose machines. I'm just going to leave it on standard. Now, the type of machine matters here. So I'm West US, Windows, still 152. I'm a D2 V3, and let me just hop down to a D4, which is the one right below it. That's $300 a month. Let's hop down to D16 or D32 here. $2,000. What are you difference here? How many CPUs? How much gig of RAM? What type of hardware are you looking at? Now, folks, you're looking at that number. I know what you're thinking. Wait a second. $2,000 a month? Are you nuts, Matt? Remember, total cost matters here. This is just for the hardware. And if you're just thinking that, then yeah, Azure may be more expensive than what you're used to seeing. But bear in mind, you have to look at the total cost. How much would it look and create if you were to have the total power, heating, cooling, the IT management for that system on-prem? You have to look at the total cost of ownership, and I'll show you, we have a calculator to help you figure that out as well. So let me go back to my D2 V3, $150 a month. Okay, seems reasonable. But now we have to get a little specialized in licensing. Now, folks, I had a choice when I joined Microsoft 19 years ago. I could go down the technical path, or I could go down some of the licensing paths. Our licensings can be complex. And I'm not asking anybody on this, listening to this, to be a licensing expert, but you want to be smart of how you purchase Azure and what you can do to leverage licenses you may already have, but also how you can prepay some of this. So one of the concepts we have inside of Azure is called a reservation. And what this allows us to do is simply say, you know what? I'm going to prepay for this machine, and I'm going to pay for so many instances of this. So after you've done your proof of concept and say, you know what, the D2 V3 machine that I have can solve my problem, and I need 10 of them. Well, in Azure, you can say, you know what, I'm going to buy 10 of them as a reserve instance, and I'm going to prepay for them for 3 years. And if you choose to prepay for that VM, we'll charge you. By the way, this can be in installments, so you don't have to pay it in one big lump sum, and that's actually relatively new. But we have the ability to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to use these 10 VMs at a D2 V3. Now, the reservation is a subscription property, so we apply this to our subscription, and whenever we spin up a D2 V3 machine, Azure automatically applies a discount. In other words, your folks don't have, oh, okay, I got to make a reserve instance. No, you apply it to the subscription level, then that reservation property seeps through the entire subscription for you automatically. And since you've only prepaid for 10, well, what happens when I get to the 11th virtual machine? It'll go back to that $150 a month. Now, bear in mind, same VM, I'm just prepaying because I know I'm going to use it. Now I'm down to $104 a month for that same VM.
Hey, Matt, I've got a question for you. So we talk about reservations, and they sound like they're a great way for us to potentially be saving money. Now, let's say I prepay for a 3-year reservation. That's what you've got selected there.
Yep.
And I decide I've got this 3 years and I want to prepay for this. But then a year and a half in, I realize that I need to upgrade because I need more powerful virtual machines. Am I locked in for the full 3 years, or is there something I can do there?
You absolutely aren't locked into the full 3 years. When you want to upgrade, you can take what you've purchased and apply it to that upgraded price. So we'll give you the new price. It's going to allow you to move that forward. Now, likewise, let's say, hey, you know what? I don't want to prepay and I want to get out of it. There is a bit of a fee to get out of the agreement, but it's not as bad as you have. And there's a really good document, matter of fact, on the calculator that talks about the penalties if you have to move out. But I'll tell you what, when folks have had to do this, it's a very minimal charge. But we do charge you a little bit. But it's not like, okay, it's a $10 million penalty because no, it's not how it works. And especially when you want to upgrade those machines, you can do so as well. And you basically take what you've purchased and apply that as a credit essentially inside the environment. But reserve instances, really great way to save money. And folks, you're thinking, oh, Matt is droning on about reserve instances. My personal experience, I saw questions on AZ900, AZ103, AZ300, and AZ301. Folks, you will be tested on this because sometimes our exam questions will always have a qualifier at the end of the questions. And you're going to see 2 qualifiers. Just exam tip for a moment here. Indulge me, folks. I hope you don't mind. Take a break from pricing for a moment. When you have exam questions, we're going to give you some kind of qualifier at the end of a question that's going to help you distinguish the right and wrong answers. And 2 of the most common qualifiers you'll most likely see on your exams, at least what I've seen on mine, you're going to give you a scenario, it's going to give you a solution, and it's going to say choose the option that is the least administrative effort. In other words, which one is the easiest to do? And it's going to give you 4 different options, and one might be 5 steps, one might be 20 steps. Well, what's easier to do? The 5 steps, right? Then you're going to have another option that says, of all these solutions, which one is the most cost effective? And you might see reservations in there. You might see hybrid benefit, which I'm getting ready to show you. Understand how you can save money. But more importantly, folks, real life, folks are going to ask you, wait a second, man, you're running this, Garrett. It's 150. Can you save money? Is there any way you can lower the cost? Well, yes, I can. And these are how we can do things. So be smart enough about your licensing. Know how to talk to your purchasing department to understand what your company's always purchased. Now I'm getting ready to show you something that might flip your brain. Remember, $150 a month is what we started at. We're down to 100 by just prepaying, 104. But what if you already had a Windows Server license? What if you already had a license that you bought for on-prem and you covered it with software assurance? You can leverage what is called the hybrid benefit. And really what that means, you take that license that you purchased on-prem and you bring it to bear inside of your Azure environment. That's called the hybrid benefit. I'm just going to make one little switch here. Watch what happens to that price. Same VM, haven't changed region, nothing else, nothing up my sleeve. It's like a magic trick. I click on it. Now I'm down to $37 for the same exact virtual machine because I'm smart about my licensing. Folks, I'm not a licensing expert. I didn't want to be a licensing expert at Microsoft. Not to knock those folks because they're brilliant. I wanted to be a technologist. But you have to understand how to price things and how you can save money because I guarantee you as you move on your cloud journey, especially when you start talking about virtual machines, 2 things are going to happen. One, how can I save costs in the virtual machine? And eventually they might say, you know what? I want to go into a PaaS service. Most of our PaaS services are going to be less expensive than virtual machines. So there's lots of ways to save money. You got to be smart about licensing as well as what service you use to leverage it. So same system that we're here. Now I want to show you a trick. And I'm going to show you a trick here for real life inside of it. Now, when I scroll all the way down to my calculator here, We have this option that says licensing program. It says Microsoft Online Services Agreement. That's pretty much the pay-as-you-go full retail pricing that we have for this. But if you have an enterprise agreement or another agreement with us as a company, how do you get what that pricing is? One little quick trick. So all I'm going to do is up here in the right-hand corner, just sign in. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my Microsoft credentials, and it actually auto signs in for me. And I'm going to scroll all the way back down to my calculator. And now notice at the bottom of this list, it says Microsoft Online Services Agreement. Now it says EA Agreement. So I can actually say EA, and I won't be able to fully show this, but it's there, and select my EA agreement for my customer or whatever I have. And what will happen to this calculator, some kind of magical, it'll put your EA pricing inside of it. And because we're Microsoft, we don't have EA agreements, obviously reasons, but where you can get your real pricing. Now, when you're in your portal inside your subscriptions for your company, any price you see inside the portal will be reflective of your enterprise agreement. But you can use the calculator to get that real pricing as well, which is a little trick by simply signing into that calculator to work with it. So let me switch back. Oh, actually, you know why I'm here? We're not going to switch back. I just want to cover the total cost of ownership calculator real quick. Now, the calculator just showed you a pretty easy exercise. Put some stuff in, tell you how much you want, gives you a price. This is not one of those tools. The TCO calculator is basically our pizza as a service. How much does it really cost to make pizza at home? How much does it cost? How much does my oven cost? How much does it cost for my time and labor? How much does it cost for cleanup? All that stuff. We have that ability to do that from an Azure perspective. And we can look at what servers we want to move, what databases we want to move, what storage we want to move, what our networking consumption is. We can put this all into the calculator to help us get a total cost of ownership. And the other thing that we can do, if I go to the next step in the calculator, we can also factor in our different costs. Do we have software assurance? Do we have geo-redundant storage? Do we have virtual machines? What's our electricity cost? What's our storage cost? What's our IT labor cost? We have all these assumptions built into the tool. Now, folks, the only thing I'll ask, if you use the TCO tool, one, be patient. It's going to take some time to build everything in here, but also be open and honest with this tool. The data you put in here, now you're seeing all those other costs associated with running a data center. And at the very end of this tool, when it's done, it's going to spit out a report that's going to show you this is how much it costs to run on-prem those solutions, and this is how much it's going to cost and how much you can save by running them inside of Azure. And so we have that total cost of ownership. And whenever I see this, I'm thinking of pizza and how much it costs to clean the dishes and do everything we eat home. As Garrett says, if you cook, you don't have to clean. How do we factor those costs in when we start talking about data? Because when you look at that big machine where it was, what, $2,000 a month, understand that even on-prem, there's a lot of additional costs. And this tool is designed to help calculate that for you. So let me go ahead and switch back into our slides and finish off with some of the other things we have in the calculator. I talked about the total cost of ownership. What you're seeing here is an example of what the reports would look like that are there, and there's some sample reports you can use. So how do you minimize costs? What are some best practices? Use the calculators, use the pricing tools, monitor your usage, Azure Monitor, use Advisor. Advisor might come up with cost-saving tips. You can set spending limits inside of Azure. Now, the spending limits you set here are soft limits. In other words, when somebody goes over the spend limit, it's going to give them warnings. It doesn't turn them off. Now, with mine, with my Visual Studio, it's a $150 limit, which means when I hit $150 spend in the month, it does deallocate everything until the next month, until my credit. But that's unique to that subscription. Use reservations and hybrid benefit. Choose low-cost regions. Keep everything up to date with your latest offerings. As we change Azure and we add features and functions, sometimes they will be cheaper than what you're currently doing. Use cost owners. Use tags to help apply those things. There's lots of ways we can help minimize costs inside the Azure environment. We also have an Azure Cost Management utility where we can come in and get patterns and seasonality. We can see how much virtual machines are costing us versus Azure Functions versus storage. We have all that ability inside of cost management. We can even get recommendations from that. We have the ability to take Azure to the next level. So pricing, very important. What about support? We have lots of support options inside of Azure of how you can work with it. Now, it all starts with our support plan options. And what you see here is a subset of the support plan options that we can have. Basically, when you look at the support plans, you have the ability to pay for support. We have basic support, which is free. You have developer support, which you get some limited capabilities, but we also have standard, professional, direct, and premier. Depending on what you want to use, they all have a price point. But the main things that customers choose support for is our SLAs to get back to you, our guarantee, but also what services you get. A lot of our enterprise customers, and maybe a lot of you watching this session, or have a Premier. Why? Because you get a technical account manager. You basically get a quarterback for your resources, for your support issues. So if something goes wrong, you have a full-time Microsoft employee that's going to help and run with it to loop in all the right resources to solve whatever problems that you have. Now, I want to show you real quick just a quick website that has all of this information. And this is in the fun path, the online learning path, aka.ms/AZ fun path. But when you take the exam, you're going to want to know these different agreements. I know in real life, folks, you have a support plan that you use for your organization. For the exam, you're going to be tested across the broad set of this. And so there's actually a website you can go to that has all of our support plans for you to use and leverage. And if you take a look at the website, you can see a lot of nuances between what the technical support is, what the response rates are, what the different severity is. We have all of this up on the websites. If you go to azure.microsoft.com/support plans, you will find that, and you have the different costs that are here. Now notice for the Premier, it says contact us. You have to have an enterprise agreement to have a Premier contract. They're fairly expensive, but once again, if your business is relying on Azure, it's great to have Microsoft in your corner if something does go wrong inside the environment. So understand these plans. Folks, just from the exam standpoint, you will be asked about these. Just review this table, understand what's available to you. In real life, if you have mission critical applications inside of Azure, guess what? You're going to use Premier to work with that environment. So let me go back into the slides real quick. We also have alternative support channels. We have our MSDN Azure forums, we have Stack Overflow, we have Server Fault, we have a general feedback channel. We also have a Twitter channel. Now, I heard a chuckle. I heard a chuckle all the way across. Everybody listen to me. Twitter really matter. Are you serious? At Azure Support. Now, folks, I cannot stress to you, you have full-time Microsoft employees on this channel. You have community members, which are called Microsoft Valuable Professionals on this channel. What I'm trying to tell you is just don't make fun of it because it's Twitter. You have 400 level experts on these channels. And even in some cases, from the Microsoft perspective, our employees have to be on the channel to help support our customers in this way. So you have very, very smart people here asking questions. So don't look at this going, hey, it's Twitter. It's just going to be community advice. No, chances are you're going to have a full-time Microsoft employee that's deep in whatever you're asking, answering your question at a 400 level depth for free because it's inside of Twitter. Now, I don't know if I'd run a business on it, but folks, the folks there are the same folks you might get through Premiers, through other agreements that are available to you. They're just not always there for you. There's no SLA and how quick they'll respond to the Twitter, but it's definitely something we want to look at inside of Azure. We also have a knowledge center where you can query our knowledge center looking for different help, looking for virtual machines. A lot of documentation's up there. A lot of known issues might be up there, kind of like the old TechNet event center where if you had an event ID, you could put it in there and get an idea of what it's going to be. We have a knowledge center where you can go and get help. It's a searchable database. But we also have the ability to open a support request. Now let's have some fun with this. Now if Azure's behaving properly, let me show you how we open a support request, but more importantly, let me show you some of the things that Azure does on our behalf. So I'm going to hop back into my portal here. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and choose Help and Support. Now, I'm going to start the story here, how I open a support request, but I want to show you a little trick. And I'm going to come back to the screen. If I go into my virtual machines, and I go into one of my virtual machines, like FunVM2, and I scroll all the way down, I also have a new support request. The great thing about this, when I go here, it automatically fills in the context where I'm at. So it says, hey, you're running a virtual machine running Windows. It's called FunVM2. It's already started to fill in the help and request tool for me. So I don't have to do it. By the way, pretty much everywhere inside of Azure, that new support request is available to you so you can save some time if you know you're having problems with a specific resource. Now I want to take you kind of the long way so I can show you what this looks like from the get-go. So I'm going to go and scroll back down and go back into Help and Support. And they give us our community. There's our Twitter channel. We can access it right from the portal. I'm going to simply say New Support Request. It's going to say, what's your issue? Is it technical, billing, what's going on? We'll say this is technical. It's going to ask what subscription I'm going to have. It's also going to select a service. I'm having a problem with a virtual machine running Windows. It's going to say what resource. I'm having trouble with the RBAC test VM. In other words, won't connect. What's my problem type? Cannot connect to my VM. What's my sub-problem type? My configuration is impacted. We'll say put that one in there. And notice what comes up. Hey, it's stopped and it's deallocating that machine. It's actually looking at this going, hey, something's on with this machine. The virtual machine is stopped and deallocated. In other words, turn it on. So when we go through the support and request, Azure has some technology behind it that's going to say, you know what? There's something wrong. And in this case, I knew the machine was turned off. and this tool told me. So it ran across my subscription. It even gives me some recommended best steps to how to actually move forward inside of there. So I have the ability to troubleshoot this. I chose this machine purposely because it is turned off. It's going to get those high-level basics, but this may not be enough for you. If I go next to details, this is where it comes in. You see my subscription. Hey, look, hey, why don't you call somebody and pay for a plan? If you have a Premier agreement and you have a technical account manager, what will happen from here is it'll actually open up the rest of the support request details. You'll fill in some information, and the technical account manager will get that request and then run for it. Most likely you're going to get a phone call, depending on the severity, usually within a few minutes, with I think guaranteed within an hour, and you'll hear from somebody at Microsoft and you'll start quarterbacking and solving whatever that problem is. So knowing how to open a support and request is very important to our Azure environment. It's very important for you as a customer to help. How do you get help? If something breaks, how do you work inside of it? How do you actually deal with those issues? And if you don't have a Premier agreement, you have ways to get plans, pay for support instance, so you can help get resolution to whatever problem. And I hope you don't have any problems, but if you do, there's a lot of help here, a lot of free help. And if you have to go pay for somebody, it's fairly reasonable when we take a look at the support issues that you might have to pay for. So let me go ahead and switch back in. And let's finish up some of the other topics inside of this module that are here, and let's talk about service level agreements. Every Azure service inside of your subscriptions have service level agreements. Now, with the exception of virtual machines where you have to configure them in certain ways or use availability sets or availability zones, you have service level agreements. And all this basically means is, you know what? We define how much guaranteed uptime you have for a product, and if we as a company don't meet that requirement, we're going to pay you back a credit. They're financially backed service level agreements, but it talks about how we define how things are going to be performant for you. So when you have outages, how do we give you credits to say that? And trust me, here at Microsoft, we hate outages just as much as you do, and we work really hard to resolve them. And how do we work with that, or how do we help meet those requirements? So first off, understand what we mean by service level agreements. It's measured in uptime, and every Microsoft product has anywhere between 3 nines to 4 nines on the average of uptime. What does that mean? Well, if you're 3 nines, that means downtime per month is 43 minutes. Downtime for an entire year at worst would be 8 hours. If we don't adhere to that, you get credits based on that service. We guarantee that monthly request, and you might have some of your monthly fees waived. You might get accredited. It all depends on what that outage looks like. Now, some resources inside of Azure, guess what? We have different service level agreements on how you configure it. So Cosmos database, for example, if you configure it in a certain read-only perspective, you can get up to 5 nines. And that's for our services. Now, we talked about storage. Storage has its own SLA, and just kind of a fun note. Locally redundant storage, LRS, 9 nines by default, and DRS, the last time I checked, 16 nines of availability. So we have different availability levels in our different areas of Azure. Now the challenge becomes is when you start working with multiple Azure services that have different SLAs. So as the writing of this slide, we had an SLA for the app services, which is 3.5 nines, and Azure SQL Database had 4 nines. How do you calculate what the actual service level agreement is? You calculate it by multiplying the two percentages together, and you come up with what's called a composite SLA. It is always going to be lower than the lowest composite, and the reason being is we have to factor in multiple points of failure here. We could have a failure at the web app, which impacts the SLA for SQL, and vice versa. So we have to be able to calculate it. And that would be what we'd have to adhere to as Microsoft for the SLA for that solution. Now, why do I show you this? Because you have to understand how to calculate it. You have to understand how it works with it. If you get a question like this on any of your exams, and just a general broad statement, if you get a question on any of your exams that requires you to do math, you do not have to do it in your brain. You'll be provided the Microsoft calculator to solve that problem. If you get this question on your exam, you simply multiply the two percentages together, and it'll give you the resulting percentage. And they just show you on the slide here, take it down to the decimal points, and it'll tell you what that actual percentage is. But understand we have those composite SLAs to help factor in the multiple points of failure. Application SLAs, when you start building these requirements, designed for resilience availability, you determine the SLA based on what those application needs are going to be. Look at the metrics behind that application. How long does it take to recover, or how long do we tolerate failures? If you have recovery inside of that, what's our RPO, recovery point objective? What's our RTO, recovery time objective? How long do we bring these things back? So when you start looking at your applications, you have to look at a lot of factors. Like, for example, we had the app services and the SQL database. Well, is there a way we can choose another service that has an higher SLA than app service services to do the same thing? These are questions you ask when you start architecting solutions inside of Azure, and then you build to those availability requirements. And when you look at things like virtual machines, by simply putting things in availability zone, you get 4 nines guaranteed SLA for those virtual machines that are in that availability zone. So we have all kinds of ways to do that. One of the last topics we're going to get into is service lifecycle management. When we take a look at all our products inside of our service lifecycle, we have 3 big stages. And along those stages, we have different costs and different SLA and support will come to bear. We have private preview. Private preview, very simply much, product is being reviewed by the product group. Generally, it's an invite only. We're looking for a very specific type of customer doing a very specific type of scenario with whatever feature. Now, if that feature survives through private preview, it goes to public preview, where customers then can open and test it. Remember, and we talked about this, I believe, in Module 2, when you're in preview products, do not put production stuff, do not put production stuff, do not put production stuff in preview. Friends don't let friends put stuff in production in preview.
Hey, Matt?
Yes?
Should I put my production workload in preview?
No.
Oh, okay.
All right. You can, by the way, and this is the challenge. We can put production stuff in here. Don't do it. Why? Because there's no guarantee the product will make it out of preview. Now, with that said, we have a lot of faith in our product group. When things hit public preview, they're normally going to make general availability. How long that takes depends on the product. Generally, it's within 6 months to a year. When it hits public preview, it's going to become generally availability. That's when you can put things in production. You use general availability. That's when it gets a cost. That's when it gets an official SLA and it gets official support, but not until it becomes GA along that life cycle. All right. So you also have the ability, we change our portal often, and this is a challenge for Garrett and his team and for myself, is that we do live demonstrations. And so I never know what the portal is going to look like, but I can look at a preview of the portal. Everybody, customers, you have the ability, if you go to preview.portal.azure.com, guess what? You can get a preview portal experience. Now, it's a little flaky every now and again. You might have some refreshes where you have to work with it, but we're trying to navigate and give you the best experience. You have an ability to get feedback in a forum. You also have to report a bug. Say, hey, look, we're having an issue with this particular portal. We can give feedback back to the product group to design a better portal experience for you. And I will tell you, folks, I have seen so many wonderful changes from the initial Azure portal to where we're at today. They really want to make the experience easy and intuitive, and you can kind of see what we're working on by going to Preview Portal. You have the ability to work with it, and it'll be on your production environment. Now, quite frankly, if you're really doing everything day to day and you need to be there, don't use the Preview Portal. It's something if you want to test and kind of explore, but if you're trying to really do stuff inside of Azure, go to the real portal, portal.azure.com, because it's going to be that full functionality. You don't have to worry about any potential bugs that are going to be there. We also publish our Not only can you look at the preview of our portal, you can look at the roadmap of our products. You have the ability to get into our roadmap and see what we're working on. Now, when you go into our roadmap, it'll show you what features we have currently in preview, what are in private preview, what features we've deprecated. In other words, sometimes when a new feature comes out in Azure, we're going to pull its old feature out. We're going to let you know that. We have the ability to look at the roadmap. You can do a quick search on the internet and do a search for the roadmap. You can look at all the data that's there. Now, the one thing I will prepare you for when you go to the roadmap, don't expect dates. We very rarely will tell you what the dates are for the resources. We're going to tell you, hey, here's the new feature we're working on. Here's why we're working on it. Here's if it's a public preview or private preview, here's where you can possibly sign up and go inside of it. So you can monitor those resources and work with it. So as you can see, even though we focused on the updates and you can see what's there, there's a lot to do with pricing and support. And folks, in real life, you may not do a lot of this, but know the calculator. If you do work in the community, know how to get the free service inside of Azure. Know what's there and know how to purchase. Be a little smart about licensing when you start having those costs inside of Azure. But for your exam, folks, there's a lot of memorization here. Know the support plans. Know the different way we can acquire Azure. Know the different tools we can use to control Azure costs, from reservations to hybrid benefit as an example. So when you get ready to take your exams, Module 4 is pretty important, and really it is part of fundamental. How do we price and support our stuff? We have to know this at a real high level, but when you get in your exams, just a little bit of memorization here goes a long, long way. And that brings us to the end of Module 4.
Thank you all for joining us over the last 2 days to learn about Azure fundamentals. Today we covered Module 3, discussing security, privacy, compliance, and trust. And then we finished with Module 4, where we talked about Azure pricing and support options. Congratulations to you. You made it through both days with us, and you've officially completed this course. We wish you good luck on your exams and happy studying.